This podcast is a work of historical interpretation. While we strive for accuracy, some aspects of history are open to interpretation and debate. Thank you for listening. What does it mean to be educated in America? Is it a right, a privilege, a pathway to freedom, or a battleground for control? The story of education in the United States is older than the nation itself. It's a story of chalkboards and chains, of triumphs and tragedies, of one-room schoolhouses, and million-student systems. From indigenous oral traditions to modern classrooms shaped by artificial intelligence, education has always been more than just learning. It's been about who controls the narrative and who gets to write the future. This is Time Tellers, and I'm Renee, and in all transparency, I am a middle school teacher.
And I'm Dan. Today we're tracing the winding, often contentious road of American education, from ancient native learning systems to the digital age. It's a journey through ideals and inequalities with stops at courtrooms, coal mines, and classrooms.
So sharpen your pencils, only when the teacher says it's okay, and take a seat, because class is in session.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't do that. It's weird.
Does that mean you're going to beat me with a ruler?
Oh, we're never going to make it through this.
Who uses a pencil that needs a pencil sharpener?
My students do.
They don't use mechanical pencils?
Long before Europeans arrived, education thrived in the Americas. Indigenous nations taught children through oral traditions, practical skills, and spiritual ceremonies. The Lakota, Haudenosaunee, Cherokee, and hundreds of other cultures passed down wisdom through elders, not books.
And it wasn't just about memorizing stories, it was a whole system of knowledge. For example, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy taught diplomacy, law, and consensus building through storytelling and ritual. Their great law of peace would later influence American democratic ideals.
Education was community-based and holistic. A Navajo child might learn weaving in stories of Spider Woman from grandmothers, while boys were taught animal tracking and survival from uncles. These weren't just chores, they were intellectual, spiritual, and communal lessons.
Colonists, on the other hand, brought a different model, rooted in hierarchy, theology, and rote memorization. In Puritan Massachusetts, the goal of schooling was to teach reading so children could understand the Bible and resist the devil.
That led to the 1647 Old Deluder Satan Law. It required towns with 50 or more families to hire a schoolmaster. By 100 families, they had to establish a grammar school to prepare boys for Harvard.
Just boys?
Yes.
Speaking of Harvard, it was founded in 1636 before the United States existed to train Puritan ministers. Only boys from wealthy or well-connected families could attend. Girls were typically homeschooled, if at all.
And let's not forget the enslaved population. By the 18th century, Southern colonies passed laws prohibiting enslaved Africans from learning to read or write. The fear that literacy could inspire rebellion.
Accurate.
That's why reading is political, just in its nature.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But that would imply people know how to read. Just saying. Still, some risked everything to learn. One famous example, Phyllis Wheatley, an enslaved girl in Boston, learned to read and write by the age of 12. By 20, she published a book of poetry, becoming the first African-American woman to do so.
Also worth noting, Native education systems were deliberately targeted for destruction. The Dartmouth College Charter of 1769 originally described its purpose as educating youth of the Indian tribes. But in practice, few Native students were accepted and fewer graduated.
Too many toga parties? Dartmouth College.
Oh, Animal House. I was like, what did he just say? Oh my gosh. Way to get us canceled.
No.
Yeah,
that's
Animal House.
That's a very good American movie about real-life college.
I thought you were I totally forgot that took place there. Like, I was just like, where is he? What is he? Okay, continue.
Wow. Later, Native children were forcibly removed from families and placed in boarding schools, where they were punished for speaking their language or practicing traditions. But that legacy begins later in the 19th century.
So before the school bell ever rang, education in North America was already a story of contrast between oral wisdom and written doctrine, between inclusion and exclusion, and between freedom and control. By the early 1800s, the seeds of public education had begun to sprout, especially in the North. But the idea that every child deserved a basic education, that was radical.
No child left behind.
Way before it's that time.
But it's the idea that every child deserved a basic education.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
See? Enter Horace Mann, a lawyer and legislator from Massachusetts. Mann became the first secretary of the Massachusetts Board of Education in 1837. He visited hundreds of schools and reported shocking disparities. Some with trained teachers and books, others with dirt floors and no chalk.
Mann envisioned a system of common schools, public, tax-supported, and open to all children. He believed education could cure poverty and reduce crime. His reports argued that education was a public good, not just a personal benefit.
And he wasn't alone. In Pennsylvania, Thaddeus Stevens, yes, the same radical Republican later known for fighting slavery, pushed for public education, saying if ignorance continues, liberty will not last.
By the 1850s, most northern states had some version of public school systems, but the South lagged far behind. Many planters saw universal education as a threat to their labor model and their power.
Catholic immigrants, meanwhile, pushed back against Protestant-dominated schools. Bible readings, hymns, and anti-Catholic rhetoric led to the rise of private parochial schools. In New York, tensions led to the 1844 Bible riots. Just wait for that episode.
Public schooling was still deeply unequal. Wealthy families hired tutors or sent kids to academies. Poor children often dropped out early to work on farms or in factories.
And let's not romanticize the classroom. A common school day might involve 40 kids packed in one room, a teacher reciting moral lessons, and corporal punishment for wrong answers.
Yet the movement spread. Teachers' colleges called normal schools, like the school Dan and I both attended, Edinburgh, started out as a normal school, were founded to train educators. Women entered the workforce in growing numbers, especially as teachers.
But they weren't treated equally. Female teachers earned half of what male teachers made. They often boarded with local families and faced strict morality clauses in their contracts.
Still, it was a path to independence. For many 19th century women, teaching was the first job that offered a paycheck, professional respect, and a role in shaping young minds.
By 1860, the idea of public schooling had taken root, but not evenly. In the North, schoolhouses dotted the countryside. In the South, well, only a fraction of white children had access, and black children were excluded entirely.
So the birth of public education wasn't a single moment. It was a slow, uneven awakening, shaped by reformers, resisted by elites, and fought for by communities who knew that the future started in the classroom. After the Civil War, the U.S. entered the Reconstruction era, a time of immense change and potential, especially for education in the South. The formerly enslaved were legally free, and for the first time, education became an urgent priority for Black communities.
In 1865, the Freedmen's Bureau was created to support formerly enslaved people. One of its most lasting impacts? Schools. Thousands were established with the help of the Northern Missionary Societies, African-American churches, and the communities themselves.
Take the story of Charlotte Fortin, a free Black woman from Philadelphia. She traveled south to teach freed children in South Carolina's Sea Islands. In her journal, she wrote about the hunger her students had, not for food, but for knowledge. They come every day, she wrote, barefoot and ragged, but eager, so eager.
But this progress was met with backlash. As Reconstruction gave way to Jim Crow, white supremacist policies resegregated the South. In 1896, the Supreme Court's Plessy v. Ferguson decision cemented the idea that separate but equal was constitutional.
Spoiler, the schools were never equal. Black schools were chronically underfunded, overcrowded, and poorly supplied. Some had no heat, no bathrooms, and no textbooks.
And yet, Black teachers and principals built strong communities with what they had. Education became a cornerstone of Black resistance and resilience.
Meanwhile, in both North and South, compulsory education laws were spreading. Massachusetts had led the way in 1852, but by 1918, every state had some form of compulsory schooling. Compulsory meaning an absolute must by law.
I'm just thinking of examples I can say that are compulsory, but depends on who you are. The reasons were complex. Industrialists wanted disciplined factory workers. Reformers wanted to keep kids out of trouble, and nationalists wanted to Americanize immigrant children.
Speaking of which, the wave of immigrants from Europe between 1880 and 1920 brought millions of children into the system. Schools became tools of assimilation. Kids were taught English, U.S. history, and patriotism. But they were also discouraged from speaking their native languages.
A Polish-American student named Sophie Wojcik once recalled how a teacher told her, "In America, we speak English. Your mother tongue stays at home." It was the beginning of a cultural tug-of-war that many immigrant families still feel today. Note, there is no official language in this country.
Absolutely correct.
Some people just need to be reminded of that.
And while public schools grew, so did inequity. Native children were taken to boarding schools run by federal government, places like Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania, where the model was kill the Indian, save the man. Children were stripped of their language, clothes, and culture.
Is that in Carlisle, Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Oh, okay, just checking. I didn't know if that was, somebody named Carlisle.
Oh, I just assumed it was located. Okay.
Oh boy, you assumed.
Okay, can we? We're really never going to finish this, Dan.
We're almost there.
We're only on page 5.
Oh.
Out of 14.
In the West, Mexican-American children were placed in Mexican schools, separate, unequal, and often lacking the most basic resources. A 1947 case, Mendez v. Westminster in California, challenged the segregation and helped pave the way for Brown v. Board. Maybe that's another episode.
So the era of compulsory education brought more kids into classrooms, but didn't always treat them equally once they got there. For many, schooling was a gateway to opportunity. For others, it was a battlefield of identity and access. By the mid-20th century, the contradictions of American education were becoming harder to ignore. Public schools were supposed to be the great equalizer, but segregation, discrimination, and uneven funding told a different story.
The turning point came in 1954 with Brown versus the Board of Education. The Supreme Court unanimously voted that separate but equal schools were inherently unequal and violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause.
Thurgood Marshall, who argued the case, brought forward evidence showing that Black children internalized feelings of inferiority from segregation. The most famous piece, the doll test, where Black children overwhelmingly preferred white dolls, associating them with goodness and intelligence.
After Brown, the segregation orders swept across the South, but resistance was fierce. Some districts shut down public schools rather than integrate. In Little Rock, Arkansas, it took federal troops to escort 9 Black students, known as the Little Rock Nine, into Central High School in 1957.
Meanwhile, white families fled to private, segregated academies. Public funding and political pressure often followed them, leaving integrated schools struggling.
In Boston, during the 1970s, court-ordered busing led to violent protests. White parents hurled rocks and insults at buses carrying black children into majority-white schools. One photo of a black man being attacked with a flagpole became a national symbol of the tensions.
And it wasn't just about race. In 1975, the Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, now IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, required schools to provide free, appropriate public education to children with disabilities. Before that, many were sent to institutions or kept at home.
Women, too, fought for equity. Title IX, passed in 1972, prohibited sex-based discrimination in federally funded education. It opened the door to women's sports, scholarships, and academic programs previously closed to them.
Another battlefront? Language. The 1974 case Lau versus Nichols ruled that failing to provide English language instruction to Chinese-speaking students in San Francisco's violated civil rights. It led to the expansions of bilingual and ESL programs across the United States.
The 1980s brought a conservative pushback. Shocker. Critics said public schools were too permissive and underperforming. The Reagan administration slashed the Department of Education's budget and promoted school prayer and traditional values.
By 1983, the landmark report, A Nation at Risk, declared that U.S. education was in crisis. It used Cold War language to frame education as a matter of national security, warning of a rising tide of mediocrity.
Accurate.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So by the end of the 20th century, schools had become more than places of learning. They were battlegrounds for race, gender, language, religion, and ideology.
And in that chaos, amid lawsuits, protests, and policy shifts, students kept showing up. Teachers kept showing up, fighting not just for test scores, but for fairness, safety, and dignity. As the 21st century began, America's classrooms looked different, but familiar challenges remained. Racial and economic inequality, culture wars, teacher shortages, and a new player in the education game, standardized testing.
What, you mean there's more to teaching than just teaching standardized tests? Because, that's the true level of...
That is not...
The true measure of a student's education is how well they can do on one test.
Yeah, right. Completely. Yep. That makes sense.
Yep,
that she says sarcastically. Go ahead.
The 2001 No Child Left Behind Act, signed by President George W. Bush, ramped up testing as a way to measure school success. Schools that failed to meet yearly progress goals risked losing funding or being taken over.
It was meant to promote accountability, but critics said it narrowed learning to teaching to the test, which it absolutely did. Art, music, and critical thinking often took a backseat to math and reading drills, and still not sure how effective that is.
The pressure was especially high in underfunded districts, like most of them. Teachers described hiding tears during planning periods. One said, "I became a data clerk, not a teacher."
Then came Race to the Top under President Obama, a program that rewarded innovation and pushed states to adopt new standards like Common Core, which has both pros and cons.
What's 7 plus 4?
21. Just kidding.
How did you show that? Which squiggly line meant what?
Right.
With what number moving?
I don't teach math. Supporters said it modernized learning. Detractors called it federal overreach.
And all this happened as classroom demographics were shifting. By 2014, for the first time, students of color made up the majority in U.S. public schools.
But funding often didn't follow diversity. A 2018 report found that majority white districts received $23 billion more in funding than majority non-white districts.
Shocker. Then came 2020. COVID-19 pandemic closed schools nationwide, forcing a chaotic shift to online learning. Students logged in from kitchen tables, phones, parking lots with Wi-Fi.
Yes, they did.
Yep.
And, and so did teachers. Teachers also logged in from those areas or their vice principal's closet. They had nowhere else to put me.
They made you do it from the school?
When we went back, yeah. Like early 21.
Why didn't they just let you from here?
Because it wouldn't be fair for the rest of the teachers that had to be in the building because I was 100% virtual and they were doing a hybrid schedule.
And they couldn't give you a classroom?
They didn't have any. There was nothing available because they needed so much space for that 6-foot rule and I mean,
I'm sure there was a basement they could have shoved you in.
that was the basement. His office was in the basement on the bottom floor of Perry.
What about the roof? The long-term impacts are still unfolding.
I didn't read my part yet. Many simply vanished. Low-income families lacked devices or internet. Teachers scrambled to connect however they could. One Georgia teacher drove 100 miles a day to hand out paper packets. I spent my time driving around Erie to hand things to my students during that time period.
Did you get gas money?
No.
Mileage?
No.
Why?
Because I was doing extra.
Oh, okay.
Like, it was like end of the year gifts, Christmas gifts.
Okay, so it was being nice.
Packets,
They weren't forcing you to. Okay.
No.
I was going to say, if they were forcing you to, there's,
No, that was not.
There.
I just dropped off Christmas presents and I dropped off end of school year presents.
Huh. The long-term impacts are still unfolding. Learning gaps widened, mental health issues spiked, but some families discovered the flexibility of virtual or hybrid models and pushed to keep them.
I did enjoy teaching online. I really enjoyed teaching online.
Because you didn't have to wear pants.
I wore pants. What the?
You just had to swear, didn't you?
I didn't.
Close enough.
Meanwhile, new debates erupted. Should schools teach about racism, gender identity? What books should be banned or protected? Districts became political battlegrounds.
One Texas librarian was told to remove a memoir about a Holocaust survivor. Why? Her reply, "I'll take it off the shelf when it's no longer true."
It's a good reply. Teachers, too, are burning out. Low pay, long hours, and now threats over what they teach. Not to mention threats of violence as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some states pass laws banning critical race theory, even though it is rarely, if ever, taught in K through 12.
Still, there's innovation, dual language immersion, project-based learning, restorative justice programs. Some schools now focus on emotional intelligence and community engagement.
Mm-hmm. And technology continues to reshape the landscape. AI tools like tutoring bots, adaptive learning platforms, and online classrooms are expanding and raising new ethical questions.
What if the bot has feelings? So what is the role of school today? Is it a factory for skills, a sanctuary for kids, a reflection of society's deepest divides? Maybe
all of the above. But one thing's for sure, education, like democracy, is a work in progress, and the classroom remains one of its most vital arenas. So let's rewind to 1979. That's the year the U.S. Department of Education officially became its own cabinet-level agency, thanks to President Jimmy Carter.
Before that, education policy lived under the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. But teachers' unions, especially the National Education Association,
NEA,
had long pushed for education to have a seat at the grown-up table.
The idea was to centralize and elevate the importance of education at the federal level, but not everyone was on board. Some saw it as a dangerous overreach into local and state authority.
In fact, when Ronald Reagan took office in 1981, he vowed to abolish the department altogether. He didn't succeed, but that tension between federal leadership and local control, it's been simmering ever since.
Fast forward to the early 2000s. Standardized testing explodes under the No Child Left Behind Act, or NCLB. It required states to test students in reading and math annually from grades 3 to 8 and once in high school. now it's also science, which is just in 3rd and 8th grade. And don't believe there's standardized testing in high school federally. In Pennsylvania here, we have the Keystones, but I don't believe that there's any federally required high school standardized test now in 2025.
Schools had to show adequate yearly progress, or AYP. If they didn't, they faced escalating consequences.
Ooh.
Warnings,
Yikes.
restructuring, even closure.
It was accountability on steroids, but the law didn't give much leeway for schools facing poverty, language barriers, or special education needs. Test prep dominated the curriculum.
Critics said teachers were forced to teach to the test. Others argued that testing uncovered achievement gaps and forced schools to serve students who had been ignored.
The backlash led to reforms. In 2015, Congress passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA.
Not to be confused with the PSSA.
Right. Which gave more flexibility back to the states. It kept testing, but allowed local plans on how to improve struggling schools.
And throughout this era, federal influence was growing, not just through laws, but through grants like Race to the Top, which offered billions to states that adopted teacher evaluations, charter school expansions, and new standards like Common Core.
Common Core wasn't a federal mandate, but it sure felt like one. Some states embraced it, others revolted. Parents were, like me, were confused by new math strategies. Political opponents called it federal curriculum creep.
And then there's the rise of data. Schools began tracking everything.
Everything. Sorry.
Test scores, growth models, attendance rates. Teachers became both educators and data analysts.
And yet we only get paid for one of those. Technology added new tools and pressures. Online dashboards, student performance metrics, and algorithm-driven learning software all promised precision, but sometimes they delivered stress, especially if you don't have the infrastructure of good internet behind you to make it all work.
Like most of the country. Did you see how Japan has it where it's like they can download all of Netflix in like 3 seconds now? They pulled it off.
Nice.
Just in some lab or something. Not like public, but the capability of doing so.
Yeah, which is where you start with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All
the movies on there. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we had a department meant to uplift equality and excellence.
Equity. That's equity, not equality.
I forgot we can't talk about equality anymore. Or diversity.
Oh my God. Just go, please.
I'm trying not to laugh. You had to start laughing.
Oh God.
So we had a department meant to uplift equity and excellence. But the more it tried to measure learning, the more some educators felt reduced to numbers.
And that's the paradox of the accountability era. The goal was fairness, transparency, better outcomes, but sometimes it made teachers feel like they were just part of a machine, spinning test bubbles instead of changing lives.
Make sure that you were using your number 2 pencil and fill in the bubble entirely. Don't go outside the circle.
And if you have to erase completely. Well, now all those tests are done on the computer. Even PSSA, like this past year, we could not do them on paper anymore. The state would not allow it at all. They wouldn't even send us the test. We had to do it online.
So you mean there's no class on how to fill in the circle anymore?
Nope.
It's so easy now.
Oh, sound like an old man.
Yeah, well, you're older.
Just Christmas.
And you had to walk uphill and all that good stuff. Still, the Department of Education continues to evolve. It oversees student loans, supports civil rights in schools, and responds to everything from school shootings to pandemic disruptions.
Whether you love or loathe it, it remains a powerful player in the story of American education, shaping not just what we learn, but what we value.
The modern classroom.
The modern classroom doesn't sit still. It's a moving target, constantly adapting to new technologies, shifting cultural norms, in a society that often demands more of schools than ever before.
A 2022 RANT survey found that over 75% of teachers reported frequent job-related stress. Burnout is so severe that districts nationwide are seeing mass retirements, unfilled positions, and even emergency credentialing of substitute teachers.
And for students, mental health has become a central concern. Between 2009 and 2019, the CDC reported a 40% rise in persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness among teens. School counselors are overbooked, and social and emotional learning programs have been a lifeline.
But they've also become political flashpoints. Some parents claim SEL teaches values they disagree with. Others say it's essential to help kids recover from trauma, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Then there is the funding crisis. While national spending on education has increased slightly in real dollars, disparities remain stark. In states like Arizona and Mississippi, per-pupil spending ranks near the bottom. Yet expectations for test scores and graduation rates are sky high.
Let's not forget the school safety issue. Since 1999's Columbine massacre, more than 300,000 U.S. students have experienced gun violence at school. What's that tell you about guns and schools?
Now, that doesn't mean necessarily people dying. That many have died. That's not what we're saying.
No, but that's still pretty much more than every other country in the world combined.
Yes.
And then some. Probably about quadruple that. Anyway, now schools have lockdown drills as routinely as fire drills. Bulletproof backpacks are sold online. Some districts arm teachers.
Wouldn't that be terrifying?
When they gave McDowell the baseball bats, the little mini bats.
I remember that. Meanwhile, debates rage over curriculum. In 2021, over 30 states introduced bills to restrict how teachers can discuss race, gender, and American history. Books like The Bluest Eye and Mouse were pulled from shelves. Educators have faced harassment simply for assigning diverse reading.
Yet students are speaking up. Across the country, young people have walked out over climate inaction, LGBTQ plus rights, and gun reform. They're saying we don't just learn these in classrooms, we live in them.
And let's talk tech. Remote learning wasn't just a pandemic blip. Now districts experiment with hybrid models, flipped classrooms, AI tutoring bots, and 24/7 parent portals. But tech has downsides: screen fatigue, equity gaps, data privacy concerns.
One North Carolina teacher said, "Half my kids come to school hungry. The other half come with Chromebooks but no idea how to write a paragraph." The digital divide isn't just about access, it's about context.
Still, in all this messiness, teachers persist. They crowdsource lessons online. They build quiet zones for anxious students. They rewrite outdated textbooks. They hold space for kids to just be kids.
And schools remain more than buildings. They're meal providers, safe havens, voting centers, disaster shelters. When a hurricane hits or a fire breaks out, it's the school gym that becomes the heartbeat of the community.
So yes, the modern classroom is under siege, but it's also a site of transformation, where resilience is taught by example and hope shows up every morning with a lesson plan sometimes and a mug of coffee always.
Or Monster. And maybe that's the most enduring truth about the American education system. It bends, it strains, and it hasn't broken, because somewhere right now a kid is learning to read, and that changes everything.
We've traveled through centuries of classrooms, legislation, and change, but we want to end with what lingers most: the people, the stories that stick, the moments that shaped lives, not just policies.
Like the story of 13-year-old Caroline LeCount, a black girl in 1860s Philadelphia. She was denied a seat on a whites-only streetcar, even though she was a top student at the Institute for Colored Youth. Her teacher fought for her in court and won. Caroline went on to become one of the first black women to teach in an integrated school in Philly.
Or Dennis Banks, co-founder of the American Indian movement. He survived a federal Indian boarding school where he was beaten for speaking Ojibwe. Later, he spoke out across the country about cultural erasure and demanded that Native children be taught their own history.
There's also Mary Beth Tinker, who wore a black armband to school in 1965 to protest the Vietnam War. She was suspended, but later became the name behind a Supreme Court case affirming students' free speech rights. Tinker vs. Des Moines changed the landscape forever.
And how about Esmeralda Santiago? She came to Brooklyn from Puerto Rico at 13, speaking no English. She struggled, adapted, and later became a best-selling author. Her memoir, When I Was Puerto Rican, is now required reading in some schools.
These aren't just inspiring stories, they're reminders that education is deeply personal. It's the kid who stayed late to finish their essay, the teacher who bought lunch for a student too embarrassed to ask, the janitor who encouraged a child to enter the science fair.
Ask around and you'll find them. The gym teacher who made you feel strong, the librarian who let you borrow banned books, the principal who told you your life mattered when nobody else did.
And the music teacher that told you to play everything. Hey, I need a bass in this jazz band. Okay.
Sorry, but do you not have a clock on your phone?
Yes. In Montana, a teacher named Sean kept a logbook of every act of kindness he saw in the hallway. At the end of the year, he handed each student a note. You held the door 72 times. You helped someone pick up their books 11 times. You matter.
In Texas, a middle schooler named Lena said the first time she ever felt safe was inside her ESL classroom. The words were hard, she said, but the smiles were easy.
A retired teacher named Mrs. Franklin told us, I never knew how much I'd miss the sound of pencils scratching on paper. It meant someone was trying. That was always enough.
At its best, education opens doors. It lights sparks. It restores dignity. At its worst, it reflects the flaws of society around it. But in every generation, there are teachers and students who push for something better.
And that's why these stories matter. Because they're not just learning to read or solve equations. They're about learning to exist, to question, to imagine.
So whether you loved school or barely made it through, whether you were the teacher's pet or the class clown, the story of American education is your story too.
And it's still being written in every classroom, every lunchroom, every late night spent grading papers or finishing a science project with a flashlight.
We hope today's journey helped you see that, not just the systems, but the souls. Not just the history, but the humanity. From oral traditions under the stars to AI-powered classrooms, American education has never stood still. It's evolved with each generation, through war, resistance, invention, and hope.
But the questions remain. Who decides what's taught? Who gets to learn? And what does it mean to be truly educated in a democracy?
As long as those questions echo down the halls of our schools, the story of education in America isn't finished. It's still being written by students, teachers, and all of us.
Thanks for joining us on Time Tellers. If this episode moved you, please share it with a friend, leave a review, or donate to a local classroom in need. We will include a link for the Amazon wish list.
Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember the future is always sitting at a desk somewhere, waiting to be believed in. That was sweet ending. Thank you. Bye.